and now for something completely different. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to welcome back to Barrel Vision, I suppose. It's also not something completely different. As you can see, we are not doing a normal Overclock Workshop episode, though. In fact, I don't think I'm going to label it as an episode of that series. I kind of want this to be a generalized video. Also, apologies if this is out slightly later in the day than anticipated, which is reasonable, although I can't imagine many people are too concerned, which is perfectly fine as well. And because this really did come up today. I really only started thinking about this today and put together what you're going to see in this video today. So, to preface what I'm going to get into, I should say that we are about halfway through the grenades for the Overclock Workshop, which is why I'm doing this now, basically. The next episode would actually be the proximity mines, but instead it's actually this, because I realized that no matter how hard I tried, every episode I eventually just divulged into explaining literally every point on every side of the argument of why there should and should not be grenade overclocks and modifications. So I thought I could do something slightly different. It could pull in some new people, hopefully. Might have further outreach than just doing the same thing over and over again. And it could be kind of interesting. And I felt a very strong need to really distill all the different points that could be made on either side of it. This is going to be a very unbiased approach to the concept of grenade overclocks. I've literally listed every reason why they wouldn't do it, and every reason why they should as well. That's why it's the whys and why nots. So I hope that this is of interest to some people. It certainly is to me. And I'm probably going to do this kind of thing again at some point. I don't think this is going to be a loft format. I don't think it's going to be a one-off thing. I don't know how much else it would apply to, but it depends on how this goes. I can actually think of a lot of different topics I'd like to tackle in this similar format. So basically, the slides that I have prepared are literally just two bullet point lists. One is for whys and one is for why nots, basically. We're actually starting with the why nots, though, to sort of, get a real downtrodden tone, make it feel like there's no hope for this idea, first of all. And then I'm going to sort of combine the two, really. It might be more appropriate to just go through them all without, saying anything. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do this once I actually start doing it. But either way, this is an unbiased look at all the reasons why there should and should not be grenade overclocks and modifications in Deep Rock Galactic. So we've got the why not. As it is a lot, there's just as many whys, though, I should point out. The first one, that grenade overclocks don't exist, and also that grenade modifications don't exist. Obviously, they're not in the game, and that immediately begs the question of why they should be. And the fact that the game's been around for so long, and the overclocks themselves have actually been around for a very long time, sort of tells us that it's very unlikely to happen, or that maybe there's a reason it hasn't happened already. By extension, or at least this especially applies to the overclocks because of the second point, in that the only thing that's ever had overclocks since overclocks were introduced is weapons. The reasons why they don't want to do it for the tools, in my opinion, is much more sound, though. I think their reasoning for why they don't want to do overclocks for grenades is not as strong, although there are a lot of reasons that they haven't considered as to why they probably shouldn't do overclocks for grenades. I also have something on the other side, something on the side of modifications, where the amount of things that have modifications, that have upgrades, has only ever been reduced. And this is only really a one-case scenario with the flares having their upgrade trees removed, but that's the only example of that happening as far as I'm aware. Which means the addition of a modification tree for something that doesn't already have it is clearly not something that they are interested in. Or at least not strongly interested enough to prioritize it in any way. This next point is a little bit strange to be in the why not, but I don't think it's really a why either. It's that both are unlikely, but modifications are possible, which I guess is a why not for Overclock specifically, the fact that they've said that modifications are actually a possibility. But they also said that grenade overclocks could easily be new grenades. An idea for grenade overclock, I should point out, this really would only apply to the balanced or unstable ones, could easily be new grenades. And I'm going to go on to highlight why it's really only the balanced and unstable ones that are good for being grenade overclocks, which might sound strange, but you know, that will come to be explained, hopefully. This is actually probably one of the most important points, is that they should prioritize overclocks for weapons. They should prioritize new overclocks for weapons, and by extension, they should also prioritize most other types of content, such as perks, biomes, missions, and enemies, or even new weapons, and also just focusing weapon balancing in general. This is a really obvious point, obviously, right? But I feel like it needs to be said. Why would they spend their time on this? And I don't really have a good... I have a couple reasons that could, counter that, maybe. But in my opinion, this is actually the best reason why they shouldn't do grenade overclocks, because it's not even close to the most important thing. The game needs a couple things, like the perk rework, and I think new overclocks for pre-existing weapons are two things that the game really needs. And in general, it's not just an assurance of player attention. It just needs to focus on re-adding the same things we're used to being added to, which are missions and biomes and weapons and enemies. And obviously the addition of constant weapon balancing, this by extension can include the season passes and season events as well. It's just like, why should they focus on this thing that would be quite menial and hasn't been, there's been no signs of it, there's been no signs of grenade overclocks and modifications before. So why should they do it now? Basically. I think that is a very strong point. And one that really pervades pretty much every point against. Every point for them doing grenade overclocks, this will sort of just get in the way, which is kind of interesting to me. I actually like this point as well, which is another point of my own design. It doesn't really come from anything that Ghost have said. Is that grenades could be viewed as a single item, where the grenade that you pick is already like selecting an overclock. Think about it in the sense of Borderlands 2, where you can pick up grenades by default without having a grenade in your grenade slot, I think. And what that actually means is that all the grenades that you have are actually just grenade modifications, really. It's just altering your base grenade. And that's not how you could see it in Deep Rock. It's like selecting an overclock for basically a blank grenade. Although that blank grenade does not exist, in my opinion, it actually should. And the HE grenade should be dissolved and made the default grenade for all characters. But if you don't select a grenade, you have HEs. That's how I think it should be, personally. But that is enough. That's sort of like a hypothetical extension of this point that's actually supposed to be about leaving grenades the way that they are. It's the fact that they are already kind of one thing. Have I really been going for that long already? Oh god. Only because of the music change. Hold on. Apologies, my friends. Anyway, next, what is the next point? Oh yeah, either way, there are dozens of grenade ideas that could give Ghost Ship new content for future seasons, and some of these new grenade ideas could easily come from these overclocks. Oh right, yes, okay, so this is about the idea of making new grenades. Because they've said that a lot of overclocks could easily just be brand new grenades, which I'm going to go on to pretty much hopefully destroy that argument, I hope. But it is true that from these overclocks that I've designed, and just in general, if you just try and think of new grenades at all, as a flat concept, there are dozens of new ideas that they could play with. And given that chances are if they did new grenades again, it would only once again be one per class, there's no shortage of ideas. So they really don't have any reason to expend them on overclocks, I guess, is the idea, which I don't think is actually that bulletproof of an argument. Some more stuff that sort of like people don't necessarily think about, but this is much more player focused, is about how bloating the overclock pool might be a bad idea in general, right? I want to point out, because people still complain about the grind, but especially if what's added to it isn't retroactively added season pass content or weapon overclocks, which it should be. We should be getting more weapon overclocks in that pool, and if we get if there's grenade overclocks put in that pool before new weapon overclocks, I can imagine that not going down well for a lot of people. In fact, it probably wouldn't go down well with me. So maybe there's some very good reasoning there. There's a similar argument for more modifications, just to approach it from that angle once again, of adding grenade upgrades. It's just, it might make the game even more of a grind for new players. The fact there's even more stuff to spend credits on, it's just like, oh, should I or should I not spend my credits on these grenade upgrades? and I guess it would just become confusing, and it would take longer for people to get everything, because in my opinion the game really flourishes once you have everything. Mainly because I've been in that state for so long and I've enjoyed it thoroughly, that I sort of see the game as really branching out once you've unlocked all of the equipment, all the weapons and modifications and even all the overclocks. It's only then does the game really start to expand and become itself, in my opinion, which might be, might not be too popular of an opinion, I don't know. The final point as to why they wouldn't make grenade overclocks is that giving the potential for grenades to become stronger by adding either modifications or overclocks. We don't want to make grenades weaker, obviously, so this is going to be modifications and overclocks on top of the grenades as they are currently. I don't think there's any other way to do it, really. But the fact that we're adding any kind of strength at all to the dwarves poses major balancing problems. And, think about it, the only example of us actually getting stronger is in random instances, things that can't be controlled and things that will not happen in every mission, things that will only happen in a very small minority of missions, such as hackable robots, or most recently the jet boots, which are viewed by Ghost Ship as a very, very potent bonus to you, a very big strength boost, but that's why they're so rare. If we added upgrades or overclocks to things that don't already have them, such as grenades, we are suddenly, even if it's in a very specific corner of our kit, we are still on some level increasing the average strength of a player, which is a really dangerous thing. I am going to make a counterpoint to this in the why section though, so we'll see that in just a moment. Although maybe perhaps to summarize all of this, I guess it really just comes down to it mainly not being a priority, or mainly just not being something that's needed, really. And it's not only is it something that's not needed, but it could also frustrate people by there just being more stuff, especially for overclocks. Expanding that pool could frustrate people. There's not enough reason to. There's things that they can far more reasonably justify prioritizing. And beyond that, there are actually very distinct reasons why you also wouldn't want to do this as well. So that really comes together to make it feel like, why would they ever make grenade overclocks? Well, here's why. If you don't mind me grabbing a drink of water quickly. Now, the top one is obviously kind of subjective, but let's be honest, it would be pretty cool. If you look at a lot of the ideas that I've come up with, and all the ideas that could exist for new grenade overclocks, like, let's just take a random example, one that I've already done. What ones have I done? Maybe, I think, yeah, the Impact Axe. Yeah, Gut Punch, where it does, like, bonus weak point damage, which is not actually the coolest thing in the world. What about this, where you can retrieve the axe, like Mjolnir? That's pretty cool, isn't it? Anyway, all I'm saying is it'll be pretty cool, and there's no better reason to do something than if it's fun or cool. That is the best reason to do anything, let's be honest. There are also, this is another thing that's just sort of, this isn't the strongest argument for anything really, but I think it is worth pointing out that there's so many ideas being left unused by not doing this. It's exactly the same for overclocks, for weapon overclocks, If you make new weapons, you're leaving... If Ghost Ship decides to move ahead with Gen 4 before making new overclocks for the old weapons, which, by the way, they won't do, don't worry. Don't worry, Ghost Ship. Then you're leaving behind so many ideas that could make the pre-existing weapons more interesting. Much like if you just moved on to make more grenades, you're leaving behind so many ideas that could make the previously existing grenades more interesting. Which I think is actually a point that will become strengthened as we go through these. So this is something that, this wouldn't be too convincing for Ghost Ship, I admit. The fact that it will give veterans even more uses for their credits, or more overclocks to unlock. Overclocks are obviously better. Most veterans have upwards of millions of credits, probably more than me. I'm at about 4 million on average. That's sort of where I hover around, and that's probably not going to change. So overclocks would be preferable because that gives me something to unlock. I can't really stop myself from doing, or that I can stop myself from doing, I should say. Obviously I could technically, I have so many mineral canisters, I could probably burn through them all and just use Forge Mastery to unlock every new overclock that ever gets added. But I don't have to, and I can just wait to get them from machine events or from promotions, which is what I would rather do. Conversely, though, on a point that perhaps is a little bit more pleasant to Ghost Ship themselves, is that it would deepen and lengthen the progression for new players, so they stay not having unlocked everything for a much longer period of time. Now, obviously, this is a very fragile topic, because for some people this can be a bit of a turn-off when the grind to get everything in a game is so exceptionally long. At the same time, it has a very high chance of increasing player attention. I would present this more as something for Ghost Ship to consider, rather than a really strong point that, lends itself either way. Now this is next one combats the idea of them, they would just make new grenades instead of making grenade overclocks. I think I almost said a different word there. And also the second bullet point here strengthens that as well. The fact that it would be easier to make the new grenade ideas as overclocks for the pre-existing ones, because it would save creating a grenade model that you barely see anyway, and also save from creating new visual effects for those grenades. It also would mean that you could get so many more ideas in by doing them as overclocks instead of new grenades, which is why I go on to mention how balanced and unstables are much, much better. I really like this point, actually, because it plays into some stuff that I've been doing recently, in that it could add depth to the unique mechanics already present in the game, such as the new snowball effect, or such as the new neurocorrosive catalyst for the Sabata, which uses the explosive chemical bolt status effect from the Bolt Shark. But the reason why I brought up the Snowball one specifically is because that's a new effect introduced by the recent changes to Snowball, where it prevents enemies from cooling. It adds a new status effect that prevents enemies from cooling after being affected by the Snowball, which is something that I proposed for it was the Cryo Grenade Unstable Overclock. And I feel like, it's something that both me and Tyler really picked up on when I pointed out that the Neurocorrosive Catalyst upgrade utilized that explosive chemical bolt status effect. It really enriches is not a word, it really enriches the parts of the game, mechanics that aren't super well utilized, I think something recently, it feels like the spreader sort of uses the sludge pump effects to some extent, and that really makes them, it just makes it feel like there's more depth to the game by reusing effects and mechanics in different ways. And the introduction of grenade overclocks would allow so much more of this to happen. It would be really damn cool. There's some stuff we did with pheromones that utilizes, actually I shouldn't spoil that, sorry. Anyway, okay, this next point though is really on thin ice, I guess you could say. It's not the most bulletproof, but it's still something. It's just the fact that you could do it without breaking the balance of the game. You could, right? And I think it's actually the next point that's more important to this. The fact that unstable and balanced overclocks could introduce new mechanics and make grenades more interesting without actually making them stronger if the appropriate penalties are implemented. We look at what balanced and even some unstable... Well, we look at what unstable and even some balanced overclocks do to weapons. We really do turn them inside out. They become almost new weapons because of how significant the downsides are and how significant the changes are to the weapon, that it really becomes something else entirely. And then it doesn't actually make it stronger or weaker, it just makes it different. And that's what we want to do with new grenade overclocks, because that's the best way to make new grenades. It's just to make overclocks that change the pre-existing grenades a lot. Which in my opinion actually creates a more interesting level of variety, where it actually makes it feel like you have almost multiple grenades stored inside the grenades, rather than just having a list of very surface level grenades to pick from. So I do actually think this is a genuinely good point hidden underneath that. Just the mere idea that you could do it without breaking the balance. I think doing it through the lens of basically using overclocks to make new grenades is how you avoid breaking the balance. Because you're not actually making it stronger, you're just turning it into something else. And like I said, that still does save on making new grenade models, and for the most part saves on making new visual effects for them. So it would save a lot of time and resources, but also allow them to make a lot more grenades, essentially. So yeah, and even then, on the subject of potentially making them stronger, which clean overclocks and modifications would just do objectively, like there's no way to avoid that, those things are upgrades. We should probably appreciate the fact that the game is actually getting harder according to what most people's experiences of Season 4. Now, this is of course based on personal experience of what I've seen on public forums, on Galactic public forums. It's a very repeated and almost agreed upon thing that the game is getting somewhat harder. The addition of new enemies is always bait for this, you know? It's like, oh, we're not used to these new enemies. But in a lot of ways, the game is getting harder and harder. The more things there are for new players to learn who don't know the difference between, you know, they don't know the difference between an acid spitter and a septic spreader, but they are different. And the number of things to learn increases the amount of difficulty there is, or increases the level of difficulty that there is. So it's probably a good idea to make. You could maybe get away with giving the players' kits a small jolt to their overall strength. And also, there's just the mere fact that introducing overclocks to a different piece of equipment that hasn't had overclocks before would just be an exciting change. And the excitement and also the additional strength that bring, I think a lot of people would appreciate. Both people who are flustered by new enemies and also new players who are just getting to grips with the game, finding out that they can actually get a lot stronger than they are when they first start playing. You know? They see that even the grenades have a deeper progression to their power. Whereas as it stands, they have absolutely none. And it could be a lot more interesting than that, frankly. Anyway. There's also a final point, which is very strange, probably. And it would be a more respectable thing to build a season around rather than just another set of grenades. And what I mean by that is, I feel like maybe, even if it's in a few seasons from now, if they decide to do grenades again, and it's just one per class, it's probably going to be a pretty disappointing equipment addition for that season. I think introducing a whole new breed of overclocks would be far more tantalizing for people. Simply, it would generate far more discussion, and I think if done well, it would go down well as well. And I think Ghost Ship are more than capable of doing it properly. So if you haven't been able to tell, I'm definitely biased towards wanting grenade overclocks to be a thing, but I'm also very much so aware of all the very good reasons why that shouldn't happen. And also, I think it's more importantly than anything else, it's not on the top of my list either. I just think it is actually a good idea, you know? But it's not on the top of my list. Top of my list is new overclocks for weapons, genuinely, because the old weapons, specifically, at this point they're all pre-existing. We've all had the weapons for a while now, including Gen 3. But Gen 1 and 2 need some new life breathed into them. Not that the most recent update didn't do a bit of that, but I love unlocking new overclocks, and I love the changes that they make to the weapons. So I want to see more weapon overclocks before anything like this. I also want to see a new simple mission type, and I want to see a new biome, and I want to see the perk rework that is almost definitely happening. Before anything like this, I just think it's straight up a good idea, but it's not at the top of my list at all, and nor should it be at the top of Ghost Ship's list. But that doesn't mean it's not worth doing. And that's really just what it comes down to for so many different ideas. And that's why I think there's a lot of potential here for me to do more videos like this. Because there's so much that Ghost Ship aren't doing that is probably more worth doing than they think. And I'm very willing to throw my hat into the ring to give reasons to why they should do certain things. And these are all the reasons why they should do grenade overclocks. Of course, we also have all the reasons why they shouldn't. So, should they or should they not? Well, I would say you could probably put it down to some kind of percentage. I would say it's probably 55% that they shouldn't, 45% that they should. I think it's probably the best way to put it. Either way, those are all the points, and hopefully a function that this video will serve is saving on me doing this every time I do a grenade overclock video. And you can sort of refer back to this. I guess something that I should elaborate on quickly, and it's probably the thing that I will bring up still in the episodes, is the fact that the series itself is a bit more about just introducing new ideas to the game almost. It's turned into a lot of me sort of trying to find a place for the ideas I've suggested in other parts of the game entirely. Um, while also taking a stab at the hypothetical scenario where we do get grenade overclocks or grenade modifications. I'm still treating that with a slight bit of reality, even though I know it's not going to happen. Either way, I really hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please let me know. If you enjoyed this style of content, I'm more than willing to do more of it eventually. Yeah, I think that's it. I see no reason to waste time. I thought it'd be interesting to prod at aspects of the game. I feel like I haven't done much prodding recently, and I do enjoy it quite a bit. So if you enjoyed, please make sure to like, subscribe, and Master Wayne, click that notification bell if you want to see more Deep Rock related content. Because I can't actually say that stuff without doing a funny voice, so I apologise. Either way, that's all for today. And we'll see you next time on the show. Bye.